What the heck is fretboard fluency? Fretboard fluency is a word, two words technically, that people have been using for the past couple of years to describe the state in one's guitar journey where the fretboard itself is no longer the thing that's holding you back from expressing yourself freely on the instrument. So being fretboard fluent, having fretboard fluency, doesn't mean that you're necessarily a shredder, but what it does mean is that if you wanted to shred in a certain way, you could figure it out on your own because of your knowledge of the fretboard and your knowledge of music in general. So being fretboard fluent means that you can play any of the melodies, any of the chords, any of the riffs that you know in multiple positions on the neck and in any key, and that you can really just like hear the music inside of your head and make that happen on the fretboard, either in a moment, which would be like the best option, or you could kind of figure out what needs to happen and you make a couple mistakes and then you can practice it for a minute and then you're there. So it's it's a much shorter time frame from hearing the music in your head and making the music in the real world, rather than not understanding the fretboard and basically having to search for maybe hours sometimes if you're writing a song or you're writing a riff and you can hear something in your head but you don't exactly know where it goes and what notes to choose, and it can take a really long time to get some of that out. And then if you want to be an improvising guitar player and play music in the moment, you're you're having a rough time. I'll put it that way. It's difficult to be an improvisational musician and not be able to play things in the moment exactly when you're hearing them. So getting to fretboard fluency, someone who is fluent on the fretboard and on the guitar, it's really three elements. So you have your fretboard knowledge, you have your musical knowledge, and then you also have a bit of ear training as well. So let's break these up a bit. With your fretboard knowledge, firstly, you have to know the notes all over the fretboard. You have to, and it's not enough to just know where the notes are and what the names of the notes is. You got to have them fast, because when you're in the musical moment and you're playing with the band and you think to yourself, oh man, I want to start this riff on G or whatever. And if it takes you a moment to find where the G note is anywhere on the fretboard, then that moment is already past you. If it takes you a second to find the note, it's too long. The band has already moved on to the next chord at that point. So you have to have the notes of the fretboard down, and you really have to have them instantly. Another thing is the chords that you know these chords all over the fretboard. So if you're playing a G chord, you have tons of options for playing different kinds of G chords all over the neck. I've been really liking that shape recently. I've been doing a lot of stuff based off of this, which has been nice. Anyway, getting back to the task on hand, fretboard knowledge means that you know the notes, you know your chords, you know your scales, and you really understand how the fretboard is put together. You understand the tuning of the guitar, and all those fundamentals are available to you on the fretboard itself. Now, the other thing we have to have musical knowledge. We have to understand how this music is constructed on any instrument, not just the guitar. So no matter what instrument you're playing, if you're trying to play a major chord, that's going to be constructed in a certain way. You're going to have the root of the chord. You're going to have the third of the chord, and that third is going to be a major third. You're going to have the fifth of the chord, and you might be able to throw some other stuff on top of it depending on what the chord is to make it a little more spicy. You could even take some chord tones away if you want. But all this to say, whether you're playing guitar or whether you're playing piano or whether you're playing trumpet or whether you're playing, I don't know, the kazoo even, all of us musicians exist within the framework of music, how music is constructed. So you have to understand how a scale is constructed, what notes you're going to choose, the distance between those notes, and how changing those distances changes the scale, changes the sound of the scale. Knowing how chords are constructed, knowing the relationship between melodies and chords, understanding how chord progressions work and how to create your own chord progressions. That's the musical knowledge that you really need to have. Because if you just know the notes of the fretboard and you just know these like chord shapes, but you don't really understand how they're made or how you can tweak them, you're not going to be able to really get to that point of fretboard fluency where you're expressing yourself freely. You also have to have that musical understanding as well. And the third thing that's super important is ear training. So what ear training really means in simple terms is that you can hear the music inside of your head and you can play it on your instrument, or you can sing it with confidence if you're hearing a melody inside of your head. And without ear training, you really are just playing random notes on the guitar. And maybe you're playing those random notes within a scale that you've learned, so you're confident that the notes are going to sound okay. But I'm going to say that those are still random notes because you're not hearing the music first. So music is all about hearing and listening, right? It's like, that's the whole thing with this music thing, is that we're listening to the music. So not only do we listen to music, but we also try and listen to the music that's in our head before we try and create it. So that is the kind of improvisational music that I like to play, that I like to be a part of. And even if I'm playing a song with a band where we're not necessarily like improvising everything from scratch, I still like to try and really hear the parts that I'm playing before I actually play them on the instrument. If you don't have an adequate amount of ear training, then you're going to be playing these random notes. And in all honesty, if you play a bunch of random notes and you throw a ton of sweet guitar pedals on it, it can still sound pretty cool. Like, I'm a fan of rock and roll and sweet guitar pedals. But for where I'm at right now in my point in my guitar journey, that's just not the kind of music that I'm really interested in making anymore. I don't want to just be playing random notes. I want to be playing intentional notes that I'm hearing in my mind. And if I want to throw some awesome guitar pedals on my intentional notes, then that's always super fun. But basically, I want to make music that sounds great even with just a clean tone straight into the amp. So that's a little bit on ear training. Why don't we try a little bit of let's see if I can do this. I'll give myself a starting note. Let's go with G because I said that earlier. Da 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 da. Right? The reason that I'm able to hear that and play it on the fretboard is that when I sing da 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 da, I know what the scale degrees are. I can hear it. Now, I didn't write that melody based off of what I thought the scale degrees were going to be. I really just sung whatever it is that I was hearing in my mind. Da 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 da. But the first thing I thought right after I sung that is I was like, oh, that's pentatonic scale. So that means that there's not going to be a 7th scale degree and it's not going to be a 4th scale degree. So da-da, I gave myself the first note, so I knew the first note was the root of the scale, and then I could hear the scale degrees from there. So 1, 3, 2, 1, 6, 5. And then because I understand the fretboard and I understand where my scale degrees are on the fretboard, then I can confidently play 1, 3, 2, 1, 6, 5. Now, this might sound like talking another language. This might sound super, super strange, but you can analyze all of music in this way. Any chords, any riffs, any melodies that you're playing, you can learn to see it in the musical terms of how the music is actually functioning, how the notes are functioning. And if you can hear that stuff, which is ear training, if you can hear that stuff and you can understand what that stuff is, which is the musical knowledge, and you know where those things are found on the fretboard, which is the fretboard knowledge, and you have those three things together, that's really what fretboard fluency is. And what fretboard fluency is it's independence, it's freedom. It means that you get to express your ideas freely the way that you really want to express them. And in addition to that, it's going to free up the space and the attention in your brain to focus on more important things while you're making music. So instead of worrying about the fretboard and worrying about what notes you're going to play, and where to play them on the fretboard, you can focus on having musical authenticity, focusing on that the notes that you're playing are actually the notes that you intend on playing. You're going to have more space and attention to listen to the band and listen to the audience and make sure that the thing that you're playing is fitting into the greater context of the music as a whole, which that is the thing. When you're playing with a band and everyone in the band is more focused on the whole band sound than each individual instrument, that's really magical. For me, when I go see live music, it's so apparent to me the difference between bands that have that holistic view and bands who are just a bunch of instruments that are all really focused on their own, what they themselves are doing. So that's what fretboard fluency is. If you've heard this term and you're confused about it, I hope that this has brought a little bit of clarity and explanation. If you would like to know a step-by-step process of how you can achieve fretboard fluency as well, I actually have the main video that's pinned to my YouTube channel that is going to walk you through everything that you would need to do to achieve fretboard fluency. And then also I talk about the program that I run where I help students and guitarists achieve fretboard fluency in just 2 months. I answer all the questions you could possibly have about that program. So please go check out that video if you haven't already. Thanks for watching so far, and I will definitely see you in the next video.